Hi, Dr. Madden. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you. It's so nice I'm honored to be here. And it's really nice to meet you.
Yes. Oh gosh. I feel like I have been talking to you via emails and your team and our team, and now I'm like, yes, we can finally have Dr. Madden here and chat with her about this really important topic, maternity leave. I am really looking forward to picking your brain. But before we get started on that, Dr. Madden, we'd love to learn more about like your story and how you ended up where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a pediatrician and I'm also a neonatologist, which is a newborn medicine doctor. Based on my own experiences with my oldest daughter, who, when we look at like maternity leave and postpartum, it was very challenging for many. Breastfeeding, colic, postpartum depression. I kind of had that whole gamut of what you hear about are potentials. That has really led me throughout my career pathway to focus on supporting parents of newborns in every possible way, especially breastfeeding, all infant feeding, and from a mental health standpoint. So I wear a lot of different hats, but the overriding theme is like to take care of both the newborn and parent dyad together as much as possible.
Oh, that's so special. And I feel like it's like the universe knew, oh, we need to throw everything at her. So she is totally prepared.
Yeah, it's saying that in hindsight makes sense, but at the time,
At the
you know,
time, you're like, really? What? This is not fair.
yes. So that's basically, yeah. So I'm on staff at an academic children's hospital, also, and then I'm Aeroflow Breast Pumps medical director too.
Yes. Oh, well, and that's why we're here to talk to you because you know all the things. Like we were just saying, we could talk about this topic for hours, but we're not going to do that to you, listeners. I promise. We're going to get to the nitty gritty and the good details. Dr. Madden, today we are talking about maternity leave and creating a good maternity leave checklist. To start, please share with us the current landscape of maternity leave in the United States. We'd love to know.
Okay. Yes. It has not changed very much in 2 decades. So the United States is one of the countries where there's no federal law in terms of maternity leave being guaranteed or needed. There's just no federal law governing any of this. And that's very different than a lot of other countries in the world. So, right now, maternity leave laws are dictated state to state. Depends on what resource you look. It's less than half of states in the US right now have any laws that have been enacted in regards to parental leave and maternity leave. There is a lot of people use FMLA or Family Medical Leave Act interchangeably with maternity leave. That is a federal law, but that does not specifically pertain to maternity leave. All that FMLA tells us is that if you either work in the public sector or private sector for an employer with 50 or greater employees, and you've worked there for 12 consecutive months, that they have to give you 12 unpaid weeks off and a guarantee that your job is there when you return. So that can be used not just for parental leave, that's for illnesses, taking care of a sick family member. That is the only protection in place. So I always want to start by explaining FMLA does not equal maternity leave. That is
Yeah. I feel
right.
like some people are like, wait, that is my maternity leave.
It technically is. So if you meet those criteria, you've been employed for a year by a large enough employer, yes, you get 12 unpaid weeks. And that the reality is that does become maternity leave for a lot of parents. Right.
Right.
So,
Oh gosh. What are your
yeah.
thoughts on that?
Oh my goodness. I thought it would be a million times better like 2 decades later, like after
Yeah.
going through all of this. I mean, so where we end up right now is maternity leave in so many cases is a mismatch of if your employer does provide it at all, and part of it or all of it is paid, It might come from a disability fund of some sort in your state. It might come from a short-term disability policy. You might be using all or most of your vacation days for your maternity leave. You may be using PTO. You may just be opting to be unpaid for several weeks at a time. So there are definitely, I would say, more employers now that have more of a streamlined and written maternity leave policy in place, but that's still not the majority. And again, this is only looking at the employers where everything is streamlined and easier and simpler. It's typically, and our Aeroflow Breast Pumps survey alluded to this. It is tipping the scale, and it's those maternity leaves that are paid and of a substantial enough length of time. It is more affluent, upper middle class population of parents. And a lot of lower income families are not qualifying for any of this through their employer at all.
Right. Which is heartbreaking because this should be available for every family, every mother.
Yes. Yes. 100%. Absolutely. And so I have to say just frankly, it's disappointing. It's extremely disappointing. It does represent our countries as a whole. When we look at just pediatric medicine, women's health, it just shows that we have leaps and bounds to still go. Small progress. It's been baby steps. But again, I would have thought it would be so much better 18, 20 years later.
Yeah. Let's hope for the next generation it's better. Oh my goodness. And how important is it for mothers to plan for maternity leave? Because I think that they're like, well, maybe they're lucky enough to get those 12 weeks, been employed by that employer for, as you said, that 12 months.
Right.
How is it important, and when do they need to start planning?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I usually recommend during the second trimester, if possible, of your pregnancy. I don't think that this is a situation. I think, one of the most important things is to make sure you're far enough along in your pregnancy that things are okay and that it looks like your pregnancy will be continuing on. So second trimester, probably a good rule of thumb, somewhere around that second trimester ultrasound that you get. Okay, for the most part, that would be a good time. I would hesitate to wait until your third trimester, in large part because this is the neonatologist side of me. 1 in 10 babies is born prematurely in the U.S. anyway. So it's nice to have that plan in place before the third trimester for that reason.
Yeah, I say the same thing, just even like packing your hospital bag. Like, you do not want to be waiting till the very end for that because you just don't know if you go early,
Yeah, you just don't know. Very important to communicate clearly and effectively with your employer. It's usually your human resources department in terms of what all of your options are. And options being, how many weeks can I take off for maternity leave? Like, what is within our policy of what can be granted? Are these weeks of maternity leave going to be paid, or are they going to be unpaid? If they're going to be paid, am I going to be getting my full salary and benefits during that paid maternity leave portion? Or am I going to be on a short-term disability plan of some sort where I'm only going to have 65% of my normal salary coming in? And then during this leave process also, if you're getting health insurance, dental insurance, those benefits from your employer, are they going to continue to pay as much as they typically do, contribute towards those during your leave? Or are you, as the employee, going to be expected to be paying extra towards your health insurance premiums while you're on leave?
Oh my gosh.
That's just kind of that basic thing. It has to be in writing. There's been so many situations just with peers of mine. This is even doctors working in hospitals where it's been communicated verbally, like, yeah, no problem. You know what I mean? You're going to get 8 weeks off. But then when push comes to shove, that's actually not the case.
What?
It has to be in writing. It has to be in writing. Yes.
And who needs to sign that? Is that your employer or the HR? Like, who is signing that?
Your department has to have a clearly spelled out maternity leave policy. And if you're wavering from that, you have to have an agreement with them in writing that your policy, that your maternity leave is going to be wavering from it. Okay, that's what I would, and that's not something that should be very hard to do. Right. So communicating expectations, never making any assumptions. Once you have a better picture of how long you'll be on leave and whether or not you're going to be paid and how much you're going to be paid, really sitting down, if it's you or if you have a partner involved, looking holistically at how can we make this work from a financial standpoint too. How can we make this work? So that's important too. I have found another that, and this isn't something I knew from the outset, but it can also be externally helpful if you have peers and coworkers who have recently gone through maternity leave in your place of business, because you also can, it's just a good way to hear their experiences and maybe get some ideas that you hadn't necessarily thought about from that first past conversation with human resources.
That's a great tip. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And again, sometimes policies change. So it could be like, the hospital I work at, their policy might be different 3 years later than it had been pre-COVID. So that, that's why that's important too.
Very true. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're saying definitely second trimester, because I'm thinking as soon as you find out, usually most people keep it, under wraps until they're in that second trimester. But when you're announcing it, I think to the world, you definitely need to be talking to your employer so they need to find out from you rather than from probably a colleague or a friend or something. Or what are your thoughts on that?
I think that would be the ideal, that when you're announcing it in your workplace, that it's announced to everybody at the same time. Right. And then, it can be, and there's no right or wrong way, but I would recommend against getting to a point that you are clearly very pregnant and haven't said anything to anyone yet too. Right.
Good point.
Right. Yeah, I do have an old colleague. I think she delivered about 12 weeks premature. No one knew she was pregnant. Nobody knew.
Stop.
Nobody knew. She hadn't made the announcement yet. And that was kind of like, everybody was like, we didn't even know she was pregnant. Like, oh my gosh, and the baby was in the NICU and whatnot. So, yeah. Yeah.
So that makes sense for when to announce it, who to talk to, questions to ask. This is all so helpful. When preparing for maternity leave, I just feel like there's so much for expecting mothers to think about. In your opinion, Dr. Madden, what are the most important things to take into consideration when planning for maternity leave? And what needs to be on every maternity checklist, in your opinion?
Okay, so this is probably not what you're going to expect me to say, but the number one thing I think is to have realistic expectations about what maternity leave is actually going to be like. So,
explain. Tell us more.
If you've had babies before and you've been on maternity leave before, you have that experience of both that juggling act of you're caring for a newborn, a new life, and you're recovering from a major physiologic change. You gave birth, be it vaginally or you had a surgery and C-section. So you're recovering, your baby's recovering, you're learning about each other. This is just a huge transition for both human beings involved.
Yes, yes.
And if you've had babies before, you know that. I laugh sometimes that I feel like we all kind of block it out a little bit, like how hard it was. I'm not trying to scare any viewers. Like, I have 4 kids, so I did this 4 times. But I think there is a tendency, and again, this isn't everybody, but if you've never had this is your first pregnancy and baby, and especially if you're in a situation where you really haven't been around sisters, cousins, aunts, neighbors, like say you're the first one to have a baby or one of the first ones, maternity leave is not a vacation. Okay.
No. Whoever made that up is just sick in the head. It's
Right.
not a vacation.
Or those like comments you hear people like, oh, how was your vacation? You know, when you come back from maternity leave. It's not a time to like look around your house and be like, oh my gosh, like I have all these projects I haven't been able to do because of work. So I'm going to fit these in. It's not a, like there's those things about it. Frankly, maternity leave is tons of breastfeeding or bottle feeding, pumping, limited sleep, trying to get a shower in, trying to maintain your sanity.
Trying to feed yourself too.
Yeah. So again, it's like you don't want to scare anybody off that's going to, especially if you're pregnant and this is upcoming. But the reality of it is to really hone your expectations into what is my job? It's to recover and it's to nourish and grow and bond with my child, my new baby overall. Yes. Right. Which segues into why I often will recommend, if possible, take as long as you feasibly can.
Amen, sister. Yes, absolutely. Do not cut that short at all the time.
No. I know, and again, I've just been in this space now for so long interacting with new moms, but I mean, so this is an example. If you have an option, you can take 6 to 8 weeks, but you're kind of worried like, oh my gosh, I'm not being a team player at work, or this is going to push so much onto my coworkers if I take too long. Let me go back at 2 weeks. Okay. I've never seen that end up with a good outcome, like in any way, shape, or form. So a lot of us have this guilt complex. Like if we leave and take this time away from work, we're letting everyone down. We're putting a higher workload on everybody else. That's something also that we really just collectively as new parents need to drop that, because the way I look at it is this all evens out in the long run. Okay, so you may have coworkers that don't ever take maternity leave, but you may have a coworker that has to take some FMLA time to care for a sick family member. Or you might have a coworker that all of a sudden needs like an emergency surgery that was unexpected. I truly feel like in the end, this is all going to even out, and that this is a time it's not selfish. It's actually taking great care of yourself and your baby to optimize that time at home without guilt at all.
Yes, I couldn't agree more, because it's not just, yes, you're physically recovering, but oh my gosh, your hormones are just all over the place. You're leaking from like every orifice. You have this little newborn that you're trying to learn about each other. Right. And for you to feel like you need to rush back to work, oh my goodness. I feel like women think, I can probably go back to work pretty quickly. But then as soon as they have the baby and experience what they experience through childbirth and immediate postpartum, they're like, oh, wait a second. This might take a little bit longer than I anticipated.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I had a dear friend when I was expecting my first, and then I felt it was true. She was like, it's going to take like 4 to 6 months for your body to even really start to feel normal again. And I think it's true, at least in my experience.
Yes. I want to say, and that to me is being very generous, because I honestly didn't even feel back to normal, Dr. Madden, like truly back to, this is my body, until both of my children were 2. Like it took a while for me to feel like, oh, I'm me again. Like I'm not healing. I still felt like I was healing postpartum, even a year and a half after. Isn't that wild?
I don't think it's wild at all. No, but I think these are the things that we need to talk about. People need to hear this for sure. Yeah, I guess my 4 to 6 months is like functioning enough that
you're not bleeding and like, leaking everywhere. Yeah, that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think I went off a little on a tangent, and I usually
this is good.
Yeah, but the realistic expectations to me is the most important thing to plan for.
I agree. What else do you think needs to be on every maternity leave checklist?
Okay. So we talked about working out the logistics with your employer, right? Like those bare basic, how long and what are the finances going to be, and figuring that out. I am a very huge advocate of enlisting a village or community of people who are going to be there to help you.
Yes.
And
Yes.
this is beyond just this. If possible, you have baby, you may have a partner with you, you're going to need more help.
Yes.
Right. So this is a situation where I always say, even if you're very independent and can do things on your own, take your neighbors want to help you, your mom, your sisters, your family, your friends, take them up on it. People want to bring you dinner? Absolutely. They ask you what you want? Go ahead and tell them. Like,
here's my order.
Exactly. People want to come and help with yard work? Bring them in. People want to come over that you trust to hold your baby for an hour so you can sleep for an hour. I know it doesn't sound like much, but when you're postpartum, that is incredible, knowing that your baby is with a safe other adult while you're just laying down to sleep. So looking logistically at, you're not doing this in isolation, nor were any of us really made to do this in isolation. And it is awesome to have a supportive partner, but that is sometimes not enough. Okay. And so really looking at who's my village to help, not just after I have a baby, but just going forward as a mom in general.
Agreed, because you don't know how long of time, if your partner has time off after the baby's born. So really, you're only going to have a couple days, a couple weeks at most of him or her being there to support you. But then what about after that? You know, this is much longer than just a couple days and weeks.
Yes. And I think that non-birthing parent leave, I think that's a whole other topic. Right?
Oh, God, girl, yes. That is a whole other episode.
I have to say, a rule of thumb, just kind of is that maybe 4 to 5 days is about the best in many scenarios, so that your partner is home for 4 to 5 days if they work.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's that piece of it too. Next one, which I am a huge advocate of preparing for, is going beyond answering the question of, am I going to breast or formula feed or bottle feed? That's a pretty easy decision to make. I think most women approaching childbirth can say, yeah, I'm planning to breastfeed or I'm planning to formula feed. But taking that opportunity to learn much more about what it actually is like to feed a baby and what it's like to breastfeed, and to then be prepared with the particulars of what you really are going to need to be able to do so once baby comes home. This is looking at things such as simple things like, okay, where am I going to breastfeed? Like, where am I going to be in the house, right? Is there a comfortable, calm, very comfortable place that I'm going to be spending 8 to 10 hours a day possibly with my baby? Looking at things like, am I going to be pumping when I go back to work, and trying to fit that into your maternity leave routine also, because that's really helpful to do. It can be much harder. So say you have 2 months off with your baby, you're exclusively breastfeeding, you know that you're going to be continuing to breastfeed, but have to pump. A lot of moms will start pumping like when they go back to work, or introduce a bottle, right at that time that they're going back to work. I really advocate doing that earlier on if possible for that transition. So if you're breastfeeding, are you going to pump, learning how to pump, getting your baby practiced on taking that supplemental bottle. Okay.
Yes.
So feeding, who is my baby's pediatrician going to be? I still work, like I just had a shift in a newborn nursery last week, and like half of the parents didn't even have a pediatrician picked out. They were like, oh, we're just gonna go, like, can we go to you? And I'm like, well, no. Because I was doing like the baby exams, and it was like, well, do you have anyone to recommend? I mean, I do. I absolutely can always recommend, but it's nice to know ahead of time. It's just nice to do that too.
For sure.
Yeah. And then also, I think this was also possibly like kind of on the list of things that I reviewed recently, but what are your other resources out there? So you've got your partner, your family, your friends, your neighbors, your village of helpers. But then when you're looking at if you have specific needs, like who will I turn to for help with breastfeeding? Or if I am just exhausted and just need one night of sleep, like, is there a night nurse or is there a doula? Is there someone else in my community? Or do I just feel totally isolated and I need to join some type of a new mom support group? What is out there? It's easier to look at those things ahead of time when you're not in the thick of it, totally sleep deprived, potentially stressed too.
Yes,
So,
because
yeah.
oh my gosh, that's when you have the energy and like the mental capacity to be able to think and research and do all of that. Because after the baby's born, you're so tired and your brain
Right.
is just all over the place because you're having to function on such little sleep and sustain this tiny little life and your own and potentially house and potentially other older children. Yeah, it's too much at that point.
Yeah, I agree. And I've actually thought, I mean, this is a thought that pops up from time to time. I think we do this amazing job of like throwing baby showers and hosting baby showers and planning baby showers and showering the expectant parents with gifts. And that is amazing. And I love I love baby showers, don't get me wrong. But I feel like there should be some other event like that where we're really hashing out all of these details. I don't know if that
Yes.
makes sense or not. I don't know what you would call it because it's not a
No,
show.
it does.
It's
It
like
does. Jessica, have you heard of nesting parties?
no. I have
Okay, so
okay. I'm
it
like
is now in
because maybe others haven't either.
yeah, so nesting parties are becoming more and more popular. And it's
Okay.
basically what you do in the third trimester. Mom invites over her closest friends and, family members to come and
Yeah.
help her prepare for baby. So they are washing the baby clothes, putting them away, washing all the pump parts, getting everything stored,
Yeah.
making all these different meals and
Yeah.
putting them in the freezer. So it's just this party of we're getting everything together and helping you nest before the baby arrives. So then it's not all on mama to have to do that. And obviously, while you're doing those things, you can share different stories of, what helped you and what you experienced and just any piece of advice if she's obviously wanting and accepting of advice at that point. But I was like, oh, I'm so glad that more women are accepting this new tradition of a nesting party, not just a baby
Love
shower.
that. I wasn't. I guess I'm not in the know, but I love that. It's fantastic. So we need to elevate that to the status of a baby shower. So it's like
I
there's
agree.
right? Two things going on. That's fantastic. Okay, good. So the idea I've been brewing in my mind already exists.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Well, it hasn't existed for that long. It's only been
Okay,
a couple of years, and I
okay.
feel like it's been trending on TikTok. And now I'm like, okay, good. I hope mothers today who are expecting are realizing, like, you know what? I'm just going to have my closest girlfriends come over, and hopefully some moms too that I'm friends with come and help me because they're going to know how to make these patsicles. They're going to know how to do all of these different things and prepare for postpartum and life and that maternity leave.
Right. Okay. That's fantastic. So that would solve that problem if everybody
So put that on your checklist. Yes.
Yes, for sure. I think that those are the
I
main
love it.
the logistical things to think about. It's a lot though. I
It
mean,
is.
it
Oh
is.
gosh.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Dr. Madden, I feel like what you've described is so wonderful and helpful for us to prepare for that time. It also sounds very similar to incorporating a postpartum plan. I've talked about this on other episodes of ours. We put so much emphasis on making this birth plan and not enough on a postpartum plan and writing out who your village is, getting your knowing who your lactation consultant is before you need that lactation consultant.
Mhm.
Your pediatrician, like you mentioned, a pelvic floor therapist if you're having issues down there, like having a therapist, a marriage and family therapist if you're just having emotional issues postpartum, like having all of those resources and preparing for it in advance so that
Mhm.
you can call on those people if and when you need them.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And the marriage and family therapist, I think that's something a lot of people probably don't think about, but that is a
Mhm.
really good idea. I also really encourage like a therapist or psychologist that focuses on maternal
Postpartum.
postpartum
Yes. Yeah.
because
In my area, it's called the Center of Postpartum Family Health,
okay,
and these marriage and family therapists only focus on postpartum. That's in my
that's
area in Houston, Texas. But
okay.
look for, I agree with you 100%, Dr. Madden. Look for if a therapist that really does specialize in the postpartum new parenthood area, because they are going to really be able to help you through that time, especially with any postpartum mood disorders, and maybe even your partner having depression and things like that. I mean, there can be so much that can happen after having a baby.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. And so those are, yes, I think, and that also is a really good way you're starting out your life as a parent, being prepared for postpartum, but there's going to be
Mhm.
so many other parts of raising kids too that kind of getting in that practice or pattern can really help you. Okay, what do I anticipate? You know what I mean? What are these resources going to be too going forward? And it's yeah, I love that. And I agree. I see a lot of birth plans have been around for a really long time. And those are great. They just don't always go
Yes.
as planned. And it's kind of like
Yes. Be flexible.
exactly. So even with your postpartum plan, being flexible too, like knowing there's a
Yes.
plan B, breastfeeding didn't work out. Okay, there's a plan B. You know what I mean? Like how
Yeah.
are we going to proceed forward? Or nobody wants to get postpartum depression, but if it happens,
Yeah.
like what are my resources? Yeah.
Agreed. Couldn't agree more. Yes, absolutely. Okay, Dr. Batter, now can you explain to us the consequences of limited access to paid or partially paid maternity leave for expecting mothers? Because you kind of, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people knew this, but I I never had maternity leave. I pushed out a baby and I immediately started working because I work for myself. So for hearing all these options,
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, wow. Can you explain the consequences of those options for expecting moms?"
Yeah, absolutely. So there's some effects on the mom and some effects on baby and some both. But the core things is if you don't have maternity leave or inadequate maternity leave, it can lead to postpartum complications. Okay. I mean, we could be looking at it could be something very severe like hemorrhages. It could be postpartum anxiety or depression. It can be problems associated with not being able to breastfeed often enough. So, like mastitis, clogged milk
Mhm.
ducts, things like that, too. So, there are definite effects and risks towards mom's health and well being. Okay.
Mhm.
The other portion of this is there is a direct correlation. The shorter maternity leave is, the less likely that a mom's going to be able to reach her breastfeeding goals. Okay, just because not having that time, I mean, it takes several weeks just to establish the breastfeeding in general. And so lower rates of breastfeeding, and we know that that is associated with higher risk of babies getting sick. Like that's just breast milk protects against infections, especially during infancy, too. So we're looking at health risks to both mom and to baby if we have inadequate or no maternity leave.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's helpful for us to keep in mind and something to talk about with our employers or the HR department and learn more.
Yes, absolutely. So those are the main ones. I'm sure that there's others too, but to me, those are a big enough deal collectively.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's enough ammunition for why you need maternity leave. And I'm so
Yes.
sorry. I've had friends that are self-employed too that have had to do exactly what you did because that's their livelihood.
It
So
is.
yeah,
Yeah. There's no time to take
right.
off. I literally pushed my daughter out in my bathtub, and my midwife is like, taking care of us. And then a couple hours later, I'm on my laptop working and answering emails. And I'm like, this is, it is what it is. But I don't want that for women. I wish that women could have access to proper care after having a baby, because it is really hard to just immediately almost act as if you didn't have a baby.
Yes. Yes, you go through one of the most major changes of your life, but then have to be fine, right? Or
Yes.
give the impression that you're fine, right?
Yes.
That's really hard. I mean, that's really, really hard to do. No, I
It
was gonna,
is.
yeah, I had one, and I have gotten permission to share this story because I've shared this story so many times. But when I was working predominantly in the neonatal intensive care unit setting, I took care of some premature triplets. And
Oh.
the parents, mom and dad, co-owned a small business. Okay. So maternity leave wasn't an option for them because they had to keep their business going. And I got to know them pretty well. I mean, their babies were pretty healthy overall. I loved this couple so much. So we really had some in-depth conversations. And one day I was like, so what's going to happen when you guys go home? Like, your babies are going to go home in a couple weeks. Okay. And they were talking about that they had a room at their office where they had 3 bassinets, and they were just going to kind of be tag teaming like all day long, every day, like that. And I was like, okay, like that makes sense. And then I was like, do you have anyone that could maybe help you too? Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah, this isn't one baby. This is 3.
I'm like, I was putting myself in their shoes and I'm like, I don't know how that's going to work with triplets. And so they were like, yeah, we probably do, but we hadn't really thought about that before. They hadn't been through the postpartum period ever before because this was their first babies. So we were able to just kind of help plan that out a little bit more. And I'm pretty sure they got someone, I think it was one of the moms, some arrangement where they were going to have somebody there almost the whole day with them so that they could be with the babies, but work and not have that stress.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's hard enough with 1. 3, oh my gosh. I have triplet cousins and I'm a twin. So I understand the multiples world a little bit. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's a lot. We're a lot as multiples.
Yeah. So I always just use that as an example. Like, even if theirs are totally capable people that run a business together, great partnership, but don't ever be afraid to ask for help. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or offer the help. Like, okay, maybe they're not asking. You know what? They probably need help. Maybe I should offer if you're able to offer. That's for
I know.
sure. Oh
I
my
feel like
goodness.
maybe I should.
No, I'm like, hello, what are their mothers or fathers doing? Like, I would immediately be like, oh, you're pregnant with triplets? When can I move in? Like, how is this working out?
Right. So anyway, but yeah, so I share that story sometimes just because
I love it.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Now, Dr. Madden, resources we need to know. Can you provide an overview of resources available for expecting moms, such as the lactation support services and online support groups, educational classes, breastfeeding, all of that? What do we need to know?
So these exist for the most part. There are nationwide lactation support and classes. And so, for example, like Aeroflow, who I work for, they actually they're really known for helping to provide moms with breast pumps, but they also have a whole area where they work with your insurance and connect you with lactation consultations 101, one-on-one. They have a bunch of live online classes that insurance will also pay for you to be able to attend. They have support groups too. They've really built up this arm of the company over the last few years.
Love that.
That's one, but there are a lot of other larger scale infant feeding and lactation support online that you can find. There also are local too. And so most local hospital systems will offer lactation consultations and support groups and classes too. Overall.
Yes, I highly recommend talking to your care provider to see, okay, where can I get that list for my local support? Because I feel like that also, just that convenience, also to be able to meet other parents in that same stage
Right.
can be helpful.
Yeah, and even in person too. I mean, I go back to pre-COVID life, and these things all existed in person. Then there was a transition to virtual. I think go back to in person, even if you're just getting out of the house like 1 hour a week.
Oh, yes.
Connect, like human connection is so important too.
Well,
Yeah,
that's why there's this loneliness epidemic. Like, we need to get out in the world, connect with one another, share our stories, support one another, especially during this time in motherhood.
right. Absolutely. So yeah, so my recommendation, I think I mean, I really think the quality of what they provide is phenomenal. There's articles, there's resources. So I mean, I would go to them as a starting point, especially because they'll work with your insurance on getting everything covered too.
Yeah, love that. They do the heavy lifting for you on
Exactly.
that. I used them after I had my son, and that was 7 years ago, to get my free breast pump, and that was so nice. Yes, I
Yeah,
love
no, I love it. Like
that.
at the hospital, I'll see like moms getting their Aeroflow Breast Pump. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so great to see it in
I
action.
love
The day
it.
back when I was having babies. So
Oh,
yeah.
so cool. And now I need to know how you recommend for women to get their partners and family members. We're talking about this village and how we need support, all of this. How can we get them more involved and even, or actually, let me restate that. Sorry, I'm going to restate this.
Okay.
Okay. So, Dr. Madden, how
Mhm.
can we get women to involve their partners, family members, and even their employers in the maternity leave planning process?
I would, it's a situation where we have to gain comfort advocating for ourselves. Um, because, and oh gosh, I don't want to say this without sounding sexist. Can I say something that might sound a little, I don't know, maybe you.
Yes, go for it. This is your opinion, and we need to know.
I think because breastfeeding and pregnancy and newborn care are such like a women's world that still in the modern day now, a lot of partners just don't have a knowledge base or experiential level at all to even know how they are supposed to help, if that makes
Right. It does. And that makes sense because the generations before didn't. So they didn't learn from their fathers.
did not.
This
No.
generation now is doing better. And I'm hoping the next generation will do even better. So we have to speak up for ourselves, just like you
Yes.
said, advocate for ourselves.
Exactly right. Because we have gone from like, I don't think my dad ever changed a diaper. Even though
Exactly.
so I think you really have to break it down pretty concretely. Like, okay, like, yes, I'm planning to breastfeed, but there are a lot of things I'm going to need your help with. Like changing diaper, you know what I mean? Changing diapers, sometimes doing a night feed of pumped milk, those types of things too. But you need to tell them instead of expecting that your partner is going to just kind of know organically what to do to help. So
Yeah, yeah, mamas. I know we think that they can read our minds, but they can't. They just want you to tell them directly what you need them to do. Even though you're like, that's another chore on me to tell you what to do, but they really don't know what to do. And they really genuinely want to help. So, yeah.
That's exactly, they do. They absolutely do want to help. So I call it coaching.
Yeah.
Like, gentle coaching, but you put this time in to do this because then when you have subsequent babies, if you have more, your partner then knows the deal, right? And I
Yes.
think most of us can speak to that once we kind of get through first baby, it's so much they know. Like they're just going to
Yes.
change the diaper, they know how to make a bottle, they can do all that too. So yeah, just this is a learning process for all involved. The second thing too is even though like say you have a mom or older relatives to help you, sometimes they just don't remember how hard it is to be in the thick of this. Because I think I spoke earlier about you kind of forget or you, and so a reminder too, like I really need help. So,
Yes.
and I was struggling with pretty severe postpartum depression after I had my first. I remember we lived relatively close to my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. And I remember calling them like, I need your help. Can you please come help me right now? And they came, but they didn't know to do that, right? Because I hadn't been vulnerable and shared that with them. So of course they came, right? And of course they helped me and took the baby. I had to ask for help, but you have to become comfortable asking for help. for sure.
Yes. From
Yeah.
your partner, from family members. Yes, this is the time where, yeah, it's not the time to be proud. You need to just ask for help, accept all the help. This is the time for you to heal and be taken care of.
Yeah, yeah. So I think like setting those expectations ahead of time. I wish I had more good advice.
No, that's good. Actually, but I did ask, like, how
Uh,
can we get even employers involved in like the maternity leave planning process?
right. It's communicating directly to them and keeping that conversation going for sure. And again, not
Yeah,
making any assumptions that they know how hard, you know what I mean? That they even know what it's like to be on a maternity leave or how hard it is too, but really being that advocate for yourself.
for sure. And I think that it's okay to say, you know what? I I'm not going to be in touch. I will not be checking my emails. Please do not contact me while I'm
Yes.
on my maternity leave. I will not be answering during
Oh,
this time because I think that they're like, "Oh, we'll just check in and we can't find this one thing, Dr. Madden. Do you know where this is?" Like really setting those expectations and communicating that to
mhm.
your employer and your colleagues, I think,
Yes.
and because boundaries, like you
Yes.
have to have them in every part of your life, and that is another space where
That,
they need to be held.
that's an absolute boundary. And it's good you bring that up because that boundary is pressed so frequently for
Yes.
moms on maternity leave all of the time.
Yes. All
Yeah.
the time.
All of the time. Right. Like, can you just make this exception? Or, right. Yeah.
Oh, it'll take you 2 seconds. You know where this is and how this works. And
Yeah.
but no,
Right.
no, I am unavailable. The only time you can reach out to me is to say congratulations and can I bring you food? Otherwise, leave me alone.
Yeah. So that vacation responder, I mean, if you have like an email app on your phone, I would frankly just remove it. You know what I mean? Like things like that, whatever it is going to tempt you to check your email, make it as hard as possible for you to do it.
Yes,
For
I
sure.
agree. Yeah, because even if it's like, oh, I'll just check and see what's going on, you are setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we need to, I think we all need to be better about that. And during
I
vacation
agree.
time too. Maternity is not vacation,
Yes,
just during any time that you have off, no matter what the reason is.
agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Oh my goodness. And now, Dr. Madden, just we're coming to the end of our time. What are your top recommendations to expecting mothers as they start to plan for their maternity leave and beyond? Just top ones.
Okay. So I think I touched on most of them. But the top are going to be, I strongly, if you can take maternity leave, take as long as you can financially swing, okay,
Hmm.
to recover and be home. And I think the second one is looking at those expectations and making sure they're realistic. And the third, which we've talked a bit about towards the end of this, is that advocating for yourself, clear communication. And now I'm going to add boundaries into setting boundaries. But it really comes down to communication of
Hmm.
this is what I need. This is how I would like it to happen because it's not just you. You are making all these decisions for two human beings. It is you and
Hmm.
your baby. These decisions affect your child's like entire life, like how it's starting out. So it's really important.
Yes. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for summarizing all of that for us. And Dr. Madden, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to leave our audience with?
Um, yes. When you are in the thick of this, it is hard. So if you have a new baby and you feel like it is difficult, it is difficult. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not failing. You are experiencing life with a newborn. It does get better, I swear to you. Because if it didn't, none of us would ever do this again. Okay. Yes, but I think yeah, give yourself grace. Okay, you're recovering and so is your baby and that is what this is all about.
Agreed. Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much, Dr. Madden. And where can people find you and your information?
So the best way, it would just be to go to Aeroflow's website. I'm listed on there as the medical director, and I think right now that would be the best way to start there.
Perfect.
Okay. All right.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Oh gosh, Dr. Madden, thank you so much for your time and for talking about this really
Yeah.
important topic. I hope that things get better for moms. I think that having a good, solid plan and to
Yeah.
make your maternity leave as successful as possible is just essential. And you walking us through this has been really helpful. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was so nice to meet you. Okay. Take care.
Yes,
Okay. Bye.
same. And for our listeners out there to learn more about Dr. Madden, as she said, you can find her online at aeroflowbreastpumps.com or on their Instagram at aeroflow_breastpumps. Our team will be posting today's episode on our Baby Chick Facebook and Instagram page. So if you have any questions or comments about our discussion, please share them with us in the comments section. And as always, if you haven't already, please subscribe to Chick Chat, the Baby Chick podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, and leave an honest review. Cheers to preparing for an amazing birth and maternity leave.